Hello, career thought leaders and job seekers. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can use NotebookLM and deep research together in a nice, happy little combo to transition from generic to specific and being that person that people are like, wow, that was an interesting conversation, or those people really know their stuff. When you're networking, when you're job seeking, when you're in that interview, how do you stand out? It's really that you've prepared to talk about what matters to people, right? And so you can use these tools to help you do that. So we come here every Friday, talk about the AI in career services. And this is one that I'm excited to talk about. We've been talking about NotebookLM. We've done some things. If you haven't checked out our Career Thought Leaders YouTube page, we've got a podcast that is all NotebookLM overviews of the research that we do every week to help keep our career services providers up to date on everything that's going on. But we can help our job seekers use it too, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Throw me a comment. Let me know if you have questions. I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing today, so we're going to be back and forth. But I love to hear from you. Love to hear your questions and your thoughts as we go through. So one of the things that we've been doing with the other AI tools for quite a while is doing industry research, right? What are the trends in these industries? What does that look like? But what I wanted to do was kind of compare what does that output look like to compared to what we get out of these new deep research tools. So we're going to go through that quickly. And then we're going to look at how we can get it into a NotebookLM and do something with it. Because, right, research is great, but we've got to do something with it for it to make a difference in our job search. Hi, Arthur. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Excellent. Okay, so let's look at, first I'm going to start with what we were doing in ChatGPT related to this research, and then we'll move into what I've been doing with it in deep research tools. And it's always an evolution. So I look forward to your thoughts on other things we could do, other questions we could ask, or other things you're doing. So here is our current or old, this is the old stuff I was doing in ChatGPT, where I was asking it for it to do industry research. So I'm searching for an engineering role in electric vehicle technology. What are the trends in the industry? What challenges are they facing? So this was a very, surface level prompt, just getting started, seeing what these tools could do. And gave me key industry trends, what's going on with engineering and power and industry challenges. So it's giving me some of that, but it's pretty short in terms of that. And of course, ChatGPT has started giving you sources. This was a while ago, so it didn't even give me sources, right? It's just pretty bare bones in terms of what I got. Obviously, it was a short prompt as well, but I didn't get a huge, long information on what that looked like. Compare that to what I just did this week in Perplexity, where I used the deep research tool. And I will say that the deep research tool is available now in ChatGPT as well. And based on some recent research, people say it's better than Perplexity's deep research tool. I just wanted to compare the two. So when I did it in Perplexity, you can see that I get numbers. My prompt was a little bit more robust, so I was telling it to pull from some different reports. I asked ChatGPT what I should do to get good output, and then those were some of the things it suggested. And then I got pretty good output in terms of the dynamics, what's going on, hybrid vehicles as a bridge technology. So just a lot more depth, right, in the industry trends and what's going on than what I got from ChatGPT outside of the research tool. Here, 47 sources that it's giving me that this information came from. So I've got this much more robust report. I've got 47 sources. I've got all this information that my client can use in their materials to help them frame their background. We're not going to spew all this stuff. We're not trying to memorize all of this stuff. Although if someone's in the industry, reading it more in depth will make sense. But it's not necessarily that we're trying to know all of it. We're going to use it as background when we load into NotebookLM. So this is where we're headed, but I just wanted you to see the difference between what I got out of ChatGPT non-research and what I got out of Perplexity. Now, in the research that people do where they compare tools, the favorite deep research tool right now is actually Gemini. So I just had to do that, and I tried it out in Gemini as well. What does that look like? What kind of sources and everything did I get there? So I'll show that to you quickly. I also did this in Gemini with the deep research tool there. You can see it's deep research, and I got a nice report. It's formatted a little better than Perplexity. Perplexity is like huge chunks of paragraphs that made it hard to see. But I did get a nice industry report here from Gemini as well. So what do we like about these, of course, is that they're doing the research. They're pulling all the sources together. I was going to see if this one told me how many sources it used. And says sources used. It does not tell me how many, but it's, I don't know, if I count there, it's 20 something, maybe 30. So I know where this information is coming from. I can click through and read the reports, which is important, especially if there starts to become some specific things that I'm going to be saying or targeting or whatever. But this is all background information that I can then include in my reports. Now, I will say that the other piece I'm going to include in my notebook, in NotebookLM, that I'm saying is differentiator, most people aren't doing this, is what I call a customer persona for the hiring manager. And so that's the next piece. We do the industry research, and then we're saying, okay, so what is a hiring manager for this type of role worried about in this industry? And we're just building context, or building context. And so I try to do that in the Perplexity deep research tool because ChatGPT told me that I could. So like, okay, let me try it. It didn't work out so well. So I'd still recommend doing the customer persona, the hiring manager persona in ChatGPT or Gemini, although not deep research. I would just do it in Gemini. Or you could do this in Claude. I just don't use Claude very often because it's not one of the ones that I usually have pulled up. But the idea is, and let me show you the prompt on that really quick if you haven't joined when we've been doing those before, is so act like a job seeker who's targeting these types of roles, build a customer persona for a VP of technology. Customer persona is a term in the marketing space that ChatGPT knows what you mean when you say it. And so it built this customer persona for me based on what I'm asking it, but also what it knows a customer persona means. So, right, build me a profile of your ideal customer. That's very common in marketing. So it knows what we're talking about. Concerns, desires, and then how to win as a candidate. So all of that is in here in my customer persona. I've got a more detailed customer persona prompt that even gives us more, but for now, this will be what we use. So what do we have? We have deep research on the industry. We have a customer persona, and we have a client resume, and everything that I'm using today is all fictionalized. It's from a client a long time ago, and we don't want to put a client's contact information into these systems at all. And we want to get their permission before we put anything in. Definitely want to get their permission before we put things in that would include company names and some of those things. So all of mine is fictionalized to the point where it really isn't even that client anymore. So I'm using that information in the system. Ooh, yay. Using NotebookLM, right? Yay. Excellent. Okay. So I'd look forward to your thoughts and questions too, Arthur and others, as we go through of other questions you think we might ask once we get all of this loaded into NotebookLM. And I did I went back and forth on whether I was going to preload it or whether I'd load it while we're talking so that you can see what it does. I am going to load it while we're talking, but that does mean I'm not going to load all of the stuff like you could or would or want to when you're doing it with a client. So let's go to NotebookLM. So I've been using NotebookLM for a while. You see my first notebook was back there in February. And like I said, we've been using it to load in the research we're doing for you as career services providers, the AI research we were just doing, what's going on in interview, hiring, et cetera. So we've been doing it for you. And now I'm going to switch into, okay, let's do it for a job seeker. So it's easy to create a notebook. I do have the first level of paid account in Google Workspace, but you can do this for free. You'll just hit limits faster. You won't be able to upload as many resources or sources, and you won't be able to make as many notebooks. I can make 100 notebooks. I think with a free account, you can make something like 50. So you may hit limits in uploading the sources, et cetera, if you've got that free account, but you will be able to create a notebook with a free account. So you can see here where it says I can upload sources. Today, I don't have anything I'm going to be uploading. We're going to be porting over some of those website links from deep research. So I'm just going to grab a few of them. I'm not going to grab everyone that was suggested. I'm just going to upload a few of them to show you what happens. So here's one of the resources that was in Gemini's deep research. I hit insert and it starts to build. Now you're going to hit some resources where it will say that it can't upload it, sometimes because it's on a protected window, sometimes because the resource doesn't work, but I can come in here and add another source, add another link, and here we go. I've got that other link in there. It'll be amazing if we don't hit something that says it can't be added, even if we just do a few, but we can add a few sources just to get that basics in here. Now I am also going to add the actual deep research output, but I would recommend that clients add at least 50% of the resources. Of course, look through them, see which most is relevant, which I'm not doing today. And then put those in there in addition to the AI created content. Why? Because you don't want junk in, junk out. I am going to put in the AI created content if I can figure out where the copy button is in Gemini. But you do want to put in the actual resources as well so that you're pulling from all of it, not just the AI created content. Now, the AI created content should be fairly good because you're just pulling from those sources, but you never know, and you want to double check it before you do the copy and paste. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to copy and put in the Gemini stuff, and part of why I'm doing this too is so that you can see the different ways that you can add sources here in NotebookLM. We've been putting in links, but you can also go to this place where you can put in content. So occasionally, if an article doesn't work, I will copy that article and put it in this way, where I add, and then I copy the text straight in there. So now that comes in as a source from Gemini, and I could do the same thing with the Perplexity. I don't think I need to do that just for the sake of our demo here. I'd add in the sources. You could also use the Discover button to find other resources, but since I use deep research, I don't feel like I need to use the tool inside of NotebookLM as well. So we've got all of our background in there from the company side. Now we're going to add in the hiring manager persona, because I'm wanting it to not just look at the industry, but the actual customer persona as well. And I'm just going to copy over what ChatGPT had and put that in here as a source. So I'm coming in here, I'm going to add, and I'm going to put in copied text. ChatGPT actually had a little intro for me, right? Here's a detailed customer's persona for a VP of technology. So it's putting that in there already and telling NotebookLM what that is, that it's the persona for my hiring manager. I would want to make sure that that's in there if I'm not copying it over from somewhere like ChatGPT where that's already in there. And then the last thing that I want to add is my client's content. And like I said, I have this very fictionalized resume. You would want to ask for permission before you did this and make sure that the client has anonymized or removed things that are personally identifying. I'm going to add that as another source. And it does at the top say use this resume as a background for what the job seeker can do, because I'm copying over something I had from ChatGPT. So you'd want to make sure that that was obvious. And I've got that in there. So now we have the information about my client, the information about the job industry. I could put in target job descriptions as well if they've identified some target jobs. Now we've set all the context, we've got all the background, and we can start figuring out what we want to use it for, right? What types of things do we want to use all of this background to help us discover? So let me make sure you're all with me. All right. Any questions thus far? Let me know. We've built our notebook. I am going to see if we can get rid of that side pane. And for now, okay, so over here, under these notes over here on the right, you can create a study guide, a briefing doc, and FAQs. Now, if you had a specific job description in here, that might relate to the specific job. Right now, it's related more to the industry and the overall role. We'll see what that looks like. So briefing document gives me the industry information. So evolving information, engineering frontiers. So it just kind of summarizes everything in a little bit different way than the deep research systems do. I find that it sometimes does a better job of summarizing than the other tools do. I don't know why, but it tends to pull out sometimes better stuff than the other ones. Our FAQs gives you questions and answers, very generic at this point. And then the last one is our briefing doc study guide. I said the briefing doc first, then the FAQs, and now the study guide. So it gives you some new types of materials. If you were doing this with a specific job description, you could build a study guide for what might be in that interview, but you're probably going to have to do that more in the chat. So let's move into ways that you can use the chat. I'm actually going to close this little side window here for a minute, and we're going to chat with the resources. So the benefit of this is that NotebookLM is not going out and looking at different content like ChatGPT and those do. Even when you ask a question about the resources it already has, it's automatically going out and looking at its big language model. NotebookLM is easier to just look at the sources that you've uploaded. So it's almost like creating what they call a small language model right here in this system. So you can feel more comfortable that it's a conversation contained to the resources that you've uploaded. So we've uploaded all this data. Now we could have a conversation with just that data, which is what we're looking for. So I'm going to say, let's see what it can do. So I'm going to put in here one of these prompts. Create a value proposition based on my resume that speaks to the needs of VP of technology in my uploaded persona. So we could also do this in other systems, but let's just see how the writing is here in NotebookLM. And we can chat with this data to get better information. And let's see how long this takes. Okay, there we go. So it gives me some language. It's always a little bit too canned, but it's a place to start, right? It gives us some phrases, and then it points it to a part in the resume, these little source things are interesting. Key concerns in the role, etc. So it shows you where it's connecting the dots, which is interesting. And then you can save that note so that it will show up in your saved notes. I could also ask what examples show that I can modernize legacy systems, and we can get some other input from this data. Ah, scrolling is, let's see. All right, based on the resume and the persona, here are some examples. And it connects the dots, right? It connects your examples to the persona and what they need. So although I wouldn't necessarily ask it to write a resume or write a cover letter, you could. What I'm having it do is do some of the strategic alignment, and then I can work through how I want to communicate that story. You maybe use some of this, but use the client's bigger stories than just what's on their resume to address these points, build out interview answers, those types of things. I'm just going to try this. Build a study guide for an interview for this type of role. And again, if I had a job description, which I just didn't have in my materials today, I just want to see what it will do if I ask it to do that. This is what a lot of people have been talking about that you can do, right? There's a lot of articles about this. I mostly wanted to show you the context that you want to set before you ask these types of questions. You're just going to get better information when you've set that context. And so it built that study guide. Again, you can save that study guide to a note so that you have it next time. So I can save that to a note. Or you can copy and paste it somewhere else. But the whole idea is that your client could build one of these notebooks for each industry. If they are doing a lot of interview prep, they could build one for each job where they'd upload the specific job description so that they are using it each time. And if they set a generic, it's not the right word, but if they set a baseline one with the industry research and that type of thing, you can duplicate a notebook. So you could duplicate that notebook with already have all of the industry background, add the job description for the specific job, and use it as a way to prepare for that specific interview, but with the underlying background of the industry research you've already done. So you wouldn't have to copy and paste all the research in there every time. You duplicate that notebook and then add in the specific job description as you're preparing for specific interviews. You can ask, what types of questions should I ask in this interview? You can ask, to help you write some interviewing questions for the interviewer or questions to ask at a networking event. But now you're building it based on this data and the data of the industry and the persona of the hiring manager. So it's all leading into the same conversation with much more detail and positioning rather than the generic things that you might get out of somewhere else around what to ask in an interview. So the last thing that I'll show you, and again, we've been using these on our YouTube channel, is that you can create this deep dive conversation over here on the right. And when I do this, the first thing I want to do is customize it. So I might say, what do I want to hear in an audio overview here? It might be, I could say create an audio overview of the So you could do an overview just of the industry background, or you could try and see what does it do if you have an audio overview of the industry and how my background adds value. And I'm just going to do this and hit generate. You can see you can select the length. I'm going to go with shorter and see what we get. But people are doing this to create interview preparation where you could listen to your own stories told as they relate to the industry needs and the job description. You could do whatever makes this effective for your job seekers. It is a fun tool. It's great to be able to listen, like, right, if you just want to do industry research and then listen to that industry research instead of having to read it. That's people love podcasts because they can do it while they're walking, while they're driving, whatever, instead of reading that huge long industry research overview that it gave us. I find it interesting, the one that I just had done on the AI job trends, it does such a good job of pulling out the really pertinent information that matters and putting it together in a way that's easy to see. So this has some elements that ChatGPT doesn't have, like the briefing doc and the study guide and that type of thing. Again, it also is more contained. So it's just pulling from the resources that you've given it instead of pulling from the entire internet, which ChatGPT will do really, even if you're specific that you don't want it to. It's just the way the model is trained. So I've seen the NotebookLM model be, again, able to be more contained, as well as just smarter at pulling out the information that really matters. So like I asked ChatGPT to take my AI and jobs research and do an outline for me for my podcast, and it did not pick out some of the resources that NotebookLM did to build its overview that I just thought sounded super smart and picked out the relevant points. So it's something about its model and the way that it was trained in terms of processing a lot of information when you're doing industry research, especially. So let me see. I don't know if I am, oh yeah, share tab audio. We'll just play with this for a second. And I can also share the link on the chat, which is fun. So here is the excellent. Okay, so here's the audio.
Okay, let's unpack this. The global electric vehicle industry, I mean, it's hitting really massive numbers right now.
Yeah.
Forecasts are pointing to what, over 20 million sales in 2025?
That's right. More than a quarter of all cars sold worldwide. It's pretty staggering growth.
It really is. But as we, look through this stack of sources you shared with us, and we're focusing this deep dive specifically through the lens of your background, well, it gets complicated fast.
It does. It's definitely not just a simple growth story. What's fascinating here, I think, is how the market dynamics are shifting.
Shifting how?
Well, the sources are highlighting these really significant regional differences. You've got China pushing close to like 50% EV market share, really robust adoption.
Okay.
But then you look at Europe and the US, and there's a bit of a rebalancing happening. A resurgence of interest in plug-in hybrids, for instance.
Right. PHEVs and extended range EVs too. And the sources seem to point towards why that's happening, right?
Exactly. It seems to come down to, well, persistent concerns. Things like the upfront price of battery electrics, range anxiety is still definitely a thing.
Still a thing, yeah.
And just the availability or maybe the reliability of charging infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you the link if you're interested in listening. So obviously it's about electric vehicles, so maybe not of interest to us, but it would be of interest to our client who's going into that field, right? And so it does, again, it's not just that it's creating the audio, but I feel like the audio feature, for some reason, just does an amazing job of pulling out the most important pieces of the data. So I've also actually been taking that audio, downloading it, and reading the transcript sometimes or skimming the transcript or using the transcript in my other stuff because it's so smart. Like, it just does a good job of pulling out the stuff that really matters. Now, our client is in the industry, so they will know if it's doing that for them. But like I said, I've been using this for our content that I'm well enmeshed in, and I still think that it is very smart in terms of what it picks up and what it highlights. So your client gets this audio, you can download the audio into that audio file, and you could, transfer it over to whatever device it is that you listen to your podcasts on. You could upload it to YouTube, right? You could do whatever you want to with that audio file once you've downloaded it, and you can create things that are important for you to listen to, whether it's your client doing this industry research, or again, this one was connecting the background to that. You could put it together as, tell the stories that are most pertinent for this interview and just play around with it and see what it can do. So that podcast was generated. Yep. And it's the same two voices all the time. You go to our YouTube channel, you look at our podcast that we've put in there with these deep dives, and you'll you'll hear that it's the same two voices every time. And Arthur's using this for an audio summary. Yeah, right. Everyone has a different learning style, and you can get what you need out of it. But it's a really neat tool. It has some really good features, but I just want to highlight that it's not just that it's audio, it's that the audio for some reason is a really good pick out of what's most important from the research based on what you tell it to do. And I've been getting better and more pointed in telling it who my audience is and those types of things. And it just is doing better and better at pulling out what really matters and what I think is most interesting to me as well as to my audience. Yeah, I'm guessing they'll add more voices. You can do it in many different languages now, which I haven't tried because I don't have a reason to. But like I said, free account, I think you get like 50 notebooks. I don't know if they'll expand that or they'll give you more options. I doubt very many people have been using this. The other thing I'll just say here is that your clients could use this if it's okay for their industry information to be uploaded. So I've got a client who works in engine manufacturing. The engine, what's it called? The technical manuals are all publicly available. So they've got a new person, they upload the manual, and now their new person can ask the notebook to find the information in the technical manuals, hundreds of pages, right? So now this new person can go into Notebook, the technical manual is loaded, and they can ask questions related to that technical manual. And, they could even create a audio that they could listen to, but the chat feature is really helpful. So it's fun. You got to have a purpose for it. You got to help your client build that context so that it is a smart, because it's not going out to the internet. You've got to build the context. And you can do that with the deep research tool, with the persona, with the job description, and of course their resume. So I love that. I hope it's helpful. Our AI sandbox this week, Wednesday, second Wednesday, every month, we do an AI sandbox with our career services providers. We're going to be talking about NotebookLM, give you a chance to ask more questions, as well as get into some small breakouts and try to do some of this with a small group. If you've not joined the sandbox yet, we'd love for you to join us. We get together every month and you get access to our library of prompt and prompt workflows. So we will see you on our next Friday in Career Services. If you have any questions or you want to join the sandbox, shoot me a message and let me know. We'll see you all in a couple of Fridays. Thanks, everyone.